Blessed love and peace. We are starting the day. Sleep in the eye. Project to do. And sharing this. Getting it done expediently to be able to concentrate on the matters at hand. Prudently. Here it is. When I say, when I describe, when I proclaim, when I bear witness that everyone, every adult in a republic, in a democracy, is a survivor of a pedophile ring. That's 100. I also mentioned that there are many different types of pedophile rings. Some are very severe and lethal, cannibalistic. Some are comparatively mild. Manipulative. Some are very intentional and disciplined. So, 3 types I share, basic, general, whatever. What is observed, what is heard, what is seen is that many of the most severe that involve the cannibalism, the cult type joints, that what we observe is that the further elite, affluent, and additionally the pedophile ring is, those tend to be the ones that have the further severities in terms of behavior, activities, because it's off in the cut, and without this perception of accountability beyond the law, the law and beyond the law. So on the surface, the kinfolk are the upstanding but then there's that release valve, and the methodology of finding the victims for that, the vulnerable mothers, and the payouts. So that's one type. Then there's another type, which is just like the grassroots family, just paying the bills kind of thing, and it can be just very simple, selling children out to whoever is around, to getting further organized with trailer parks, rural areas, suburbs, the hood, passing a child around, and nobody cares anyways. So there's that situation. There's the elite, the middle class, the upper middle class, slow, liberal grooming, long-term manipulation, mindfuckery, and gradual exposure, and continual manipulation through adulthood. Guilt tripping, lightweight threatening, privileges, carrots and sticks, fear, stress, and additionally, but it involves, at an early age, exposure to sexual activity, not necessarily intercourse, not necessarily like direct type of molestation, but just the sexual corruption of children, particularly boys, and all different types of manipulation. There tends to be a culture around it, whether it's LGBTQ, whether it's liberal, like laissez-faire. Hey, let's smoke some herb. Hey, let's drink some wine. Da 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 da. And just corrupting the children at a very young age, in a very slow, and this is like family, friends, um, leaders in communities or whatever. But it's a casual, gradual um, thing that, um, in that process, uh, well, all right, the children are corrupted, and as the children are corrupt, the children become increasingly proactive in involvement, particularly with the carrots and sticks, and additionally, so that's pervasive around society, and the consequences can be severe. Um, the carrots can be severe too, meaning like lots of benefits and rewards, um, and parents being very proactive in grooming one's own children to be further coveted within the rings, because within that the family, the parents are also provided with greater carrot standing, whatever, and it can lead towards marriage arrangements or whatever, um, but often it leads to just like individualism, and other types of psychological angst and otherwise. Um, there's the conservative version of this. I said the liberal. There's a conservative version of this where, particularly a boy, it's kind of like the Siddhartha. It's the Siddhartha paradigm, where parents have means, and uh, parents are doing dirt, and know that there's a brief window to be able to like recruit their own children into that dirt, and particularly the sons again into that dirt, and so uh, do provide all types of affluence and comforts and spoils and everything else like that. Uh, Very conservative mindset about life and who's who and what's what. And but at the same time, the fathers, and actually not just the fathers, the mothers can be very prominent in this as well. But parents, um, being very conservative and traditional or old school in terms of, okay, young boy is coming of age, and he needs to like get into that his manhood or whatever, and so providing a woman for that, a young woman or whatever, as the introduction to sexual experience, and additionally, and so I say it's the Siddhartha because that's what happens with Siddhartha, to be honest, and that's pedophilia. His father provides him with all the lavishes and whatever, the nursing women, and additionally, um, but it's very um, much understood. Yo, Siddhartha was doing his thing, as the prince, having those things, and enjoying the senses. So that's again in the conservative version, in middle class, upper middle class, and additionally, so there's a liberal version of kind of just like a culture of like, yeah, we do what we want to do, it's no problem, blah 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 blah, and gradually grooming children into that type of corruption, and then the conservative is very strict here, and eventually like grooming the children at a young age, particularly to stay in that game, and that involving sex. The girls being groomed to be just very subservient and just be like, yo, you like this stuff? You want to stay with us? You better do what we say. And da 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 da. Women in their place. And so yeah, okay, now it's time for you to be with so and so now. And that's it. That's it. Now, each of these things has that susceptibility and the eventuality of just becoming very OC, and unraveling, and just like the the, the nets and everything else. I mean, the other thing is the other methodology, or the in between kind of joint, is just when it's not even liberal or conservative. It was just like absentee parents, absentee parents, and in the absence, popular culture, plata, does its thing, and when that's very evident, just how much sexual degeneration is prevalent within society today. When children are exposed to that, at a young age. Children have a natural proclivity to learn and discover life in this universe, in this temporal realm, and it's parents' role to keep the harms and temptations away from children as much as possible. And so when parents are absent, and there's media, technology, and all this predatoriness, that's pedophilia culture, just by basic principle, off rip. So when parents are not even intending to groom children or whatever else, but are not doing enough to keep that away from children, that's pedophilia. And that's pedophilia rings, because there's an intentionality in that separation between the parents and the children. Not necessarily on the part of the parents' part, but on the part of the predators of society. So that's a de facto significant methodology of pedophilia rings. The other one that I'll share is religious, um, and actually very disciplined, very strict, orthodox. But it's still a matter of grooming children, particularly amidst those challenges, amidst those temptations. And additionally, there's the necessity of providing, particularly the boys who like start to get antsy with the grooming, and it's a part of life. Like there's the necessity of children becoming adults, and the preparation that adults provide for children to become adults. That's a necessary part, and so it's just a methodology of doing it. When it's done in a genuine way, in a genuine interest for the well-being of the children, to become healthy adults, to become healthy members of the community, the family, the society, to become married, healthy relationship with a spouse, and have children further. That's the optimal and guided methodology. It still involves grooming, and things that are less than that are that's when it gets into the manipulation. That's when it gets into the corruption, and that's when it gets into the predatoriness, even self-predatoriness within one's own fold. So within the religiosity, it's a matter of recognizing that that process is a necessary process of grooming, teaching. It's a fine line. Children how to be adults, how to have healthy relationship, how to have healthy sex within a healthy marriage, and when religious community particularly. No, so that's that. Now, that's the ideal, that's the optimal thing. And that applies to cultural communities, and additionally. That being said, within religious communities and within cultural communities, traditional communities, there's already an intrinsic susceptibility towards corruption. So anything less than that ideal, that's the corruption. That's one thing. And that can be recognized as pedophilia, that corruption. And it might be mild and otherwise. However, it is. And what is quietly communicated in those very close-knit Orthodox communities is that the experience of the corruption is very intentional, or how do I put this? The experience of the corruption is I don't want to say mild, acute, mild, meaning that there's a formality, or how do I put this? Perhaps one way of describing it is that it's much further supervised and chaperoned than, and with the intention of eventuality of marriage, and further. So for the part of the male and the female, well, sometimes again, like in the scenario with the female and the conservative example of like just being told what to do, and certain women being designated as the introducers. There's that observance within religious communities as well. um, and it's a nasty thing. Um, but the whole process is further chaperoned with the intention of the children staying within the community, getting married, and continuing the traditions of the community. So again, there's further intentionality, and dare say redemptiveness or whatever, but there it is, and it's there's a normalcy within this, meaning that it's a regularity. There's a regularity within it that is observed, um, and it's extremely quiet, extremely like very few can see that because very few have access to what's going on. Sometimes it rears its head, and it's a normal culture, but in that normal culture there are extremes of it, and eventually, like the extremes of it, reveal itself, and that revealing of the extreme for those who pay attention shows a normalcy, or excuse me, a regularity, a um, what's that word? Talking about chronic behavior, a culture, or a pathos within the community, and that's all different types of communities: Catholic, Jewish, Hindu, Buddhist, Muslim, and further. So, but again, most kinfolk don't want to like pay attention to that because most kinfolk are involved in it themselves. So, um, that's some of the religious methodology of the religious version of this joint. Uh, there's a summary joint. Okay, here it is. So, um, there are many different types of mind manipulation. in the different types of pedophilia culture, um, and there are many different types of scenarios of carrots and sticks, rewards and punishments. It hits within a person's primal instinct to procreate, and the yearnings and all, and like the crux of existential striving, um, sexual activity. I mean, there's basic things: food, sleep, sex. That's some of the basics. And sex is one thing that requires interaction with somebody else. And so because of that, there is that opening to the manipulation of all else's and further vulnerability to the predatoriness. So there's the psychology. It's such mindness. Um, when somebody is chaste, when somebody's a virgin, and not caught up in the ciphers and all the web of sex rings and whatever else, because again, it's one flesh. So two people get together in the sexual intercourse. That's one flesh, and when anybody else enters into that relationship, another man has sex with a woman, the man has sex with another woman, whatever, boom, that's four people of one flesh, and the mind becomes much like further static dissonance, and then when further people join in that circle of sex, it's just further static, and in that static, it's again, it's stress, it's disease, it's insecurity, it's jealousy, it's greed, it's hostility, it's pain and suffering, and it's manipulation to try to like raise one's sense of pleasure in that experience and minimize the sense of pain, and perception that to maximize the pleasure, it requires reducing the self of others, in particularly men towards men, women towards women, in those circles, the jealousy and greed. So mind, it's the mind. Now, one thing that is observed, and this is what I particularly personally observe with my own challenges and experiences in life through the years since a young age, pornography is extremely challenging for many decades, even to this day. Don't have the further. I have further discipline and effectiveness in staying away from pornography. However, for many decades, I'm pushing 50, so for many decades, pornography, and this was before it was so pervasive and accessible on the internet. I'm talking about just magazines and then videos, even before the days of videos. So that's pedophilia. When children have exposure to pornography, that's pedophilia. Straight up. And when it's so pervasive within society, regardless of what the actual laws are, whatever else, society is practicing and perpetuating a pedophilia culture. Everybody involved, all the citizens, all the voters, all the taxpayers, all the politicians, everybody's involved in that pedophilia culture, where children are being corrupted, sexually corrupted, by exposure to sexual intercourse. And in that exposure, in that corruption, then being subject to manipulation by society, because the adults know this. And the adults say, oh, you like that magazine? Oh, you dirty, aren't you? Oh, look at you. And the children, still in that Garden of Eden kind of experience, just finding out about being naked, and then feeling guilty and not being able to be self-sufficient because they're children, 3, 4, 5, 6 years old. And so the adults, whether it's parents, whether it's family members, whether it's other teachers or otherwise, for whatever intentions of how to use that child, know that the child is being corrupted and feels guilty about it, is very quiet, particularly the boys, and thus, manipulation, um, and devaluation and all different types of pimp game. That's pedophilia. Um, Pedophilia isn't always about just actual sexual violation. It's a matter of sexual corruption and then the continual manipulation and subjugation, exploitation from or through that, or from and through that sexual corruption. So, um, that's society. That's across the board, and it happens in small rings with intentionality, and tangibility. So, that's one of the reasons of describing, and one of like the pervasive evidences of this, of like this being like the culture of particularly the United States. Like this is a major part of the culture. Is this one recognizing how prominent science is, how prominent medicine is, how much people have been separated from their own bodies, to take knowing how to take care of their own bodies, and rely upon the advice of doctors, the consultation of doctors, just to be able to like basically live, particularly at middle age and further, stages of life. So, um, just recognizing science and medicine as prominent authorities, even like beyond authorities, because in many ways, well, I won't get to comparison, but, it's a form of government, and, it's very authoritative. It's authoritarian. So, there's that element, and peace and blessings to all kinfolk in science and medicine. Peace and blessings to all kinfolk of society, in the world, and the universe. What is the point here is this. In my personal experience with the psychiatrists, with psychiatry, over 20 years ago, um, when I'm very angry with society, about what's going on, and additionally, and that anger is utilized against me, that's my own fault, that's my own doing. I have to learn still at that point and cultivate discipline. But the pretense from society, from the psychologist, or not the psychologist, but from the psychiatrist, um, is this articulation of concern for my well-being. This feigned kind of bullshit, duplicitous, deceitful kind of, we're concerned, and then in being concerned, that opening the door to basically behavioral control, and torture, and molestation and violation of the body, dehumanization, devaluation of a person, of a being, until they become, um, compliant, till they acquiesce, till they submit. Um, Gradual torture, worse and worse and worse. And then it becomes, at this point within psychiatry, it just becomes a chemical thing of just applying, drugs, um, and holding the person in captivity until the person either just becomes, um, like a zombie, and just says, okay, I can't fight any further, whatever, okay, fine. And then as long as they agree to keep taking their meds, um, then no further nasty business. But if they don't, if they're not cooperative, here come the guys with the guns, and lock up, and torture, and then the chemicals again. But there has to be some type of, front of legitimacy, and so part of the process, particularly in the initial stages, once it happens, then it's like, well, it's already happened once, so this person has a history of this now, so now we have the da 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 da. But in the first stages, and it's the first occasion, it might happen. Oh, look at that crusty crust. Oh, it might happen in numerous occasions at the beginning stages, but as a way of setting a precedent. But what is done is, just asking standard questions about one's psychological fitness, questions about hurting themselves, hurting others, feeling like hearing voices, um, thoughts of people out to get them. All of these questions, um, if anybody's going to answer in society, it's going to be yes. All the answers to those questions are yes, but they sound very nasty. Like, oh, wait a minute, what's going on with your mind? Um, and part of the like the initial process again is a feigned sense of like legitimacy, is doing like a personal history. Once a person is like talking, and for myself, the initial intentionality, even after being tortured in addition, is like, yo, just let's talk, let's reason, let's talk about this, because that's what I'm trained to do. For like half a quarter of a century, I'm trained to counsel and reason and negotiate. And additionally, and so whatever y'all doing this for, like we can find a better way. I'm not at y'all, so I know from my side, there's no reason to be doing this to me. So let's talk about this. What y'all going through, what y'all scared about, what y'all suffering, that we can deal with, so that y'all don't have to do this. Because I'm not coming at y'all. Why are you doing this to me? I'm trying to have that kind of conversation, and so I haven't I have a motivation to talk. I have a motivation at those stages to just be like, yo, let's reason about this. Let's just be reasonable. Let's be rational. Let's be calm. And these are people with high intelligence, high IQs. Let's talk about this. So it's very evident that the intention is not to talk about it. The intention is not to reason it. The intention is not to find a solution. The intention is simply subjugation, behavioral control, compliance, subordination, enslavement. That's it. That's what the intention is. And it takes a long time, because again, I grew up in life learning about oppression, this and the other, but at the same time, like still believing like, yo, people who have these jobs, doctors and whatever, like apparently doctors. I mean, we already know about police and government and everything, but doctors, we're conditioned to trust and not even question. So psychiatrists are doctors. The Hippocratic Oath. There has to be some type of foundational, like, root and basin of just benevolence and empathy and compassion and like healing. That's what this is supposed to be. So wherever that is, yo, let's get to that point and talk from there. But again, it becomes evident that that's not it. That's not the point. That's not the motivation. That's not why many cats go to medical school. Cats go to medical school for self-validation, and to be elite, and to affirm what the parents want, and to be regarded within society as third-class citizens. Again, high-skilled laborers. So healing might be a pretense. Healing might be a beginning for some, even for maybe many. When doctors become paid and like everything else like that, then that attracts people with a certain ambitious mindset. So it's not always healing. Particularly if doctors were like poor and hardly got anything, then it would attract the kinfolk who would be focused on the actual work of what's supposed to be healing. But even like, at this point, the role of psychiatry is not necessarily to listen to people and to hear their problems and sort out what's going on and to find the solutions. If anything, that's psychology, that's therapy, that's other types of counseling. That's not psychiatry. Psychiatry is popping meds, is pharmaceuticals, it's behavioral control. It's numbing somebody, zombie-like, just to be a sheep. And that's actual facts. That's not derogatory. That's what it is. And it's difficult to see that. It's difficult to accept that, even when it is being done to me at that time. Even when I'm lawyer trained, with the kind of lawyer doctor rivalry and distrust or whatever, still it's like, okay, but y'all still doctors though. Y'all still supposed to like heal. So let's reason with this. Like, I understand why the government's at me, but why are y'all at me? Anyways, point is, I had to learn, I guess, a difficult way, like about the actualities, even amongst the doctors, and when kinfolk themselves, like, they think that they're doing a nice thing. When the nurses seem to be like think that they're nice and trying to be nice and genuine, and even nurses who know like, yo, this is not the right thing, but what else can I do? I'm trying to make it as less painful as possible. But still, yo, you're taking your paycheck and you're going along with it. So it's difficult to kind of like just be honest about that when it's happening to oneself, because I myself am raised in this society and knowledgeable about the injustices, but at the same time, thinking and presuming that there's like some baseline. Like, come on, y'all know, but y'all know, right? Um, and there is that, but at the same time, it's not through it's not through the auspices an occupation or a vocation. It's further intrinsic within spirit and just being, and so it's not a matter of relying upon um, um, conventional presets or whatever as a trust within the benevolence of people. Now let's get into the further spiritual. So, but my point here is this: in those beginning stages, when people are doing the history and asking me questions, so as I was talking about, like my motivation to reason, like even after being tortured, catheter forcefully inserted within my penis to extract urine, all types of explanation and rationalization. Oh, we have to do tests for drugs, this, that, and the other. Um, it's a violation of the body. I did nothing illegal. I did not threaten anybody. Anyways, all right. So there's always a reason for things being done. There's always a reason on the books for things being done. But what the underlying reason is pain, torture, for somebody to become compliant, submissive, enslaved. And even when it's being done to somebody, there's all different types of trying to rationalize it and trying to figure out this and the other. When I have them, I keep going by that. I'm motivated. Even after that's done, I'm motivated to talk. I'm motivated to say, y'all, come on, y'all. Let's just reason about this. Let's be rational. So I participate in the questioning, and additionally wanting to do a family history and getting further information about me, and let's find out what's going on. I've had that experience within psychology. I've gone to psychologists before in my life, and I've had that experience of counseling or whatever else on a number of occasions, periodically, from actually elementary school through university, not frequently, but here and there. So I'm somewhat familiar with like the line and like the thing. So I'm like, okay, cool. Let's talk about the recent. And so I answer the questions. I try to be as, and this is when the psychiatrist will eventually arrive and like sit down and talk. So and there might be a psychologist involved in that process. That's been 20 years ago, but I think it's even. I don't know if they do it this way today because it hasn't happened in the latter iterations of the lockups. But in the initial stages, there was somebody who sits down for like an hour at least and just gets like personal history. So again, okay, if you're trying to figure me out what's going on, what's the problem is, and again, presumption of trying to find a solution, but just getting information on a person just to know how to like further get at that person. Um, so, but in that initial stages, when just learning about what it is, okay, here it is. Here's everything. Blah 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 blah, and that happens on a number of occasions. Each time I was locked up. Um, Eventually, after the torture and everything, and things get settled down, I have the drugs in my system at that point, and so now there's just like a wearing down of the will, and additionally, and the anger and everything. So, okay, fine. You want to play this game? We'll talk. Now, and again, I observe the questions that are asked, asking about family history, about parents, about history of psychological disorders, or whatever else. Talk about stress, this, that, and the other. Like all different types of business, personal business, and everything else. What I recognize, though, is that there was no questioning about sexual activity. None. No questioning about sexual activity. All different types of very detailed questions about other things. Have smoked marijuana? Do you have any history of drug use? This, that, and the other. No questions about sexual activity. No questions about pornography. No questions about masturbation. No questions about relationship, healthy relationship, abusive relationship in terms of sexual interaction or spousal interaction. There might be a question about spouse. That might just be primarily just to discern how much protection and backup that person has, responsibility that person has in life. But when we are trying to find something about the well-being of someone's mind and healing relationship, and particularly sexual relationship, sexual activity, is one of the most prominent influences in that experience of well-being. So when somebody has a genuine interest in healing somebody, that's one of the first questions, particularly an adult, a young adult too. Are you sexually active? How many people have you had sex with? Who have you had sex with? What has been the experience with the people that you've had sex with? What is your standing in of relationship with those people at this moment? What have been some of the challenges? What are some of the benefits or the things that you appreciate within that relationship? Those speak significantly to the psychological experience of every individual, of each individual. And none of those questions were asked because less of an interest. Actually, not less of an interest, and a very keen interest in avoidance. One, again, not trying to find a solution, trying to find methodologies of manipulation and subordination. And the questions about sex and relationship not just speak further to finding a solution to what a person is experiencing, but also provide further connection with a person. So part of the process is isolation, is separating that person from everybody else that person knows. And so that for people who are close are at some point part of the betrayal in many ways in this scenario, either through abandonment, either through malice and intentionality or otherwise. So part of the process of the subordination and enslavement is isolation from everybody else. If the people who are doing that start asking questions about the person's relationship with others, that's connection, that's healing, that's strength, and that brings those people to mind. Those people are then part of the cipher, even in that room, in the interrogation room, and those people, for better or for worse, are like part of that person's life, and they're reminding that person of like who they are, who they're with, the support they have amidst all the challenges and everything else like that. They're being further mindful of relationship with others in this life and the support that they have one way or another through those relationships. When it just becomes you individual, it becomes a polarizing, isolationist experience where it's just heady. It's just like abstraction to the point of just like paralysis. Oftentimes, it becomes a wrestling match between the interrogator and the interrogee. So that's one of the intentionalities we observe concerning the absence of those questions about relationship. The other thing also, again, just recognizing how significant sex is and sexual relationship is in a person's psychology, a person's viewpoint about life, the experiences of depression and euphoria, the imbalances of that, the insecurities and the jealousies and the greeds and the hostilities that are gleaned just through that experience of sexual intercourse and sexual relationship, all the notions of self-doubt and questioning if somebody's not having sex. And then here we go into the further, like the crux of this situation is addressing the experience of masturbation and pornography and recognizing how severe the psychological consequences are, the psychological effects are of masturbation and pornography. How much that skews, say it again, how much that skews a person's perspective of the world. Because from personal experience, when watching pornography, and particularly watching pornography for like an extended period for like 1 or 2 hours at least, and this is through the years, this is before the internet. This is when it's just video at home by oneself, by myself, for a few hours watching pornography. Life itself is extremely different. A woman is naked, and giving all types of suggestions and invitations and everything else like that. That's not actuality. It's actuality at that moment because we see it, it's happening. She's doing it on the screen. But then when going out into society, women generally, and we don't want it to be that way. Women aren't going around naked saying, "Yo, let's go have sex." But when a man is watching pornography, that's in his mind, and so it takes a while. It's like being in another world, and it takes a while for him to get adjusted to even just how he looks at this world and what expected. Because when he sees a woman walking down, she's very conservatively, modestly dressed. She has a full dress on, and she even has a head covering or whatever else. Like in his mind, I'm speaking from personal experience, and there's severities of how much this is. But when he's just been watching pornography, and he's just accustomed to seeing a woman naked and just like inviting sex, when he's walking on the street and he sees a woman who's just like conservatively dressed and just like staying to herself, a prominent thought in his mind is, oh, she wants it. Oh, like, oh, I know what's under that skirt. Oh, I know what she really is. She's just trying to she's pretending to be all innocent and everything else, but I know the truth. I've seen it myself. I know. That's the mindset. And there's an element of truth within that, but it's a matter of severity, how severe that is, and how much that affects his ongoing life. Now, again, in that experience, eventually, like after like staying away from pornography for a certain period, if it's just a few hours or a day or whatever, then a man tends to get further acculturated back to the actuality of the world and life. However, it's still, the further he watches it, the further he gets immersed into that experience of pornography culture, the further it corrupts his mind concerning the actuality of what his expectations are, what he perceives behind the veils, and additionally, so all of that is extremely relevant when addressing the typical psychological afflictions that psychiatry and psychology are supposed to be dealing with today, in terms of psychosis, schizophrenia, depression, bipolar, and all these clinical diagnoses. Sex and sexual corruption is a very prominent precipitator of this malaise. It's not the only thing, and there are other major things as well, but the fact that it's not asked is extremely telling, because what it says is that, oh, the doctors don't want to talk about that because, you know what? The doctors are involved. The doctors are doing it. The doctors are being predatory. And you say, oh, are you basing this on eyes wide shut? Kind of, sort of. And additional evidence and testimony, and further. Just the fact that doctors abstain. There's no standard in psychiatry in terms of what healthy behavior is. What is described is functional. Functional means doing what everybody else is doing. That's not healthy, particularly in this age. So there's not, and that was one process of reasoning as well. After a number of years, and I get like give it some footing, and I'll be like, okay, y'all coming at me with all these accusations. It's just so bullshit, because like it's bullshit. But at the same time, I have to explain how it's bullshit, not just for myself, but as a systemic methodology. So I start asking questions about, okay, so if you accuse me of like being abnormal or being unhealthy or whatever else, tell me what healthy is. Like, what's the example? Like when we study scriptures, we see the example of the people, the teachers who are living it, and they say, here's what it is: be honest, be patient, peaceful, chaste, sober, modest, generous. Those are examples. Those are general examples, but still, that's an example of like what healthiness is. Psychiatrists don't do that. Psychologists don't do that. Psychologists point at adverse behavior and then just harp on that. So my point is that the doctors abstain from saying this is how people should be. The psychiatrists abstain from saying this is what appropriate healthy behavior is. This is what appropriate healthy relationship is. Because when doing that, one is held accountable. Because if doctors aren't doing that themselves, then they can lose licenses. And because doctors don't do that, it is evidence that there is an absence of a standard, a code of behavior, even just a social behavior amongst the practice of medicine. which shows the availability for the practice of sexual corruption. If there are no rules, then there's the sanctioning, the permissibility of sexual corruption. If there's the permissibility of sexual corruption amongst people who have influence and standing and conventional power, oh, then we delve into the predatory. That's part of the rewards of being a doctor. And again, peace and blessings to doctors. And not all doctors are like that or whatever else. But at the same time, all doctors are participating and if not doing it, turning a blind eye to it, and just watching it happen. So there's culpability all around, just as there's culpability all around society. So, and this is part of my answer to that culpability within myself. I'll into this joint, and let's wrap it up with that. But that's the point: is that when we talk about the pedophilia, and we talk about the sexual corruption at a young age, and we talk about the pervasiveness of mental disease today amongst adults, we can recognize, when we're honest, one of the significant causal factors is sexual corruption at a young age, exposure to pornography, masturbation, a person manipulating himself. It's rape, particularly for a man. When a man is masturbating, he is being raped by at least one other woman or whoever else he's thinking about and whoever else is influencing. He's being raped because he's abusing himself. That's sexual abuse. So that's mental affliction. That's mental disease. And we don't hear the psychiatrist or the psychologist talking about it that too tough, or hearing about psychological studies that talk about the severe consequences of pornography and masturbation. Now people are talking about it to a certain extent, but still, like, when we look at the significant ails of society, how much is being spent on mental prescription drugs for psychological disorders, even just things like depression and anxiety and attention and deficit, whatever, HD, whatever. Not looking at the root causes of the behavior in the mindset, and additionally, because those root causes are part of what are the root foundations and methodologies of society, sexual corruption, at least contemporary society, maybe even just society in general, particularly city civilization. So anyways, and there's evidence, because when psychologists don't, or when psychologists may get into that kind of line of question, if the person like either initiates it or shows like a receptivity to that kind of question, because psychologists are further tasked with finding solution or finding some kind of like stopgap measure. Psychologists are tasked, equipped, have the authorization to actually listen and think about the person as an individual rather than as a chart and a chemical balance. So but aside from the psychologists, the psychiatrists show less interest, less genuineness in discussing sexual activity, sexual behavior, and the basic experiences of pornography, masturbation, and other types of abuse, molestation, and self-abuse and self-molestation. And because those questions are not asked, because those conversations are not had, the viable, genuine solutions are distant. So phrasing that in an increasingly affirmative way, when we are interested in people's well-being and healthiness, we ask those questions, we have those conversations, and we address those root causes. It's not a matter of like a complete absolute elixir in terms of like healing or whatever else. Like there's always going to be suffering, one way or another, in this life. Um, However, we can mitigate some of the severity of that, um, and provide further well-being and balance and calmness, peacefulness of mind, um, and proactive healthiness. Maybe even somebody being strong enough mentally to put on some clothes, and have regularity of prayer and meditation, um, and get that sleep out the eye before presenting himself in public. Blah 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 blah. And wearing a head cover. Oh, you don't see it. That don't have all these dim joints in it. Come on, you raggedy. It's not Raggedy Ann. What is it? Raggedy Andrew? No. We'll find something else. But anyways, that's the joint for today. And honesty is nasty and is beautiful. It's necessary. In it, all thanks and praise to the Most High Elohim, known by many names and beyond all names. Respect and honor to the four directions of the wind: far sky, Grandmore, moon, Grandfar, Soleil, Inamaka. Our plant relatives, insect relatives, our swimming relatives of the waters, our flying relatives of the air, our relatives of the land, no-legged, two-legged, four-legged, many-legged. Respect and honor to all our ancestors, prophets and sages, past and present, known and unknown. Respect and honor to all our relatives we meet in this life, who return home within the dreaming and now walk with our ancestors and the oneness of the Most High Elohim. Respect and honor to all our parents, our forebears, and our elders. Respect and honor to all our relatives of creation who walk these roads of creation with us today. Respect and support to all our progeny, de los primeros 7 años a los próximos 7 generaciones, dor vador. Respect and honor to His Majesty Haile Selassie I and Her Majesty Waizara Manen, and the perfect balance of husband and wife. One heart, one mind, one love supreme. Blessed love and peace in Rastafari.